All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christopher Lowry, and this is the Brushfire Mind. So here you are on a Friday night with nothing better to do, apparently, than listen to me yammer. But I sure do appreciate your attention if you've got the time to hang out and have a little conversation. Throughout the course of the show, please feel free to send us some comments on YouTube or Facebook, monitoring the pages, and ready to engage those comments. And do please subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel, support the mission. The mission is, of course, to spread the word about liberty. That's why we are the Brushfire Mind. Samuel Adams said that it is not the majority, but rather a tireless and irate minority setting brush fires of liberty in the minds of men. That is how we not only win, but retain our freedom. A freedom which at present is dwindling rapidly in the face of basically the simple human nature to gravitate toward tyranny. The natural state of man is to die slowly. Pacifism, starvation, disease. Men choose to allow themselves to die, or they go out and live. One does not live by simply continuing to exist. If one simply continues to exist without making active effort to live, even so basic an activity as acquiring and consuming water and food and air, you will die. If you do not expend the effort to breathe, you will die this hour. If you do not spend the effort to take in water, you will die this week. If you do not spend the effort to take in food, you will die this month. The natural course of man is to slump slowly to death. Man gravitates toward tyranny, fearing that he will be unable to live by his own means. And so he demands that a tyrant come along with guns and take from other men the means by which he lives. A man demands that it's not fair that he works, that he doesn't work hard enough to have enough food to feed himself. And so it's our responsibility to feed him.
No, you don't work, you don't eat.
Amen.
It's not me that said that. That was Aesop.
Yep. Said of the fiddling grasshopper. I have Cameron Anderson calling in on the line tonight. We don't have him on the video feed. He's calling in from his phone as he's at his desk. So we'll have Cameron here for the conversation. And I've got John Byrne hiding in a very, very loud coffee shop somewhere in the frozen north, the very frozen north. But hopefully we'll get a little opinion coming from John over the chat feed here. So it is the activity of living. One does not live by chance. One lives by doing the work of living and by doing the work of becoming better. I've often referred to myself as a personal supremacist, the idea being that if I work to make myself better, that I cannot help but cause other men to become better by seeking to surpass me. I dare them to surpass me in some capacity. I try to raise the bar. And I cheat. The bar is higher for me because I'm 6.5 feet tall. You got to reach for it. Come on, son. Let's play. But it is the nature of living that one must pursue the activity which causes life to continue. And him that does not pursue living will slump slowly into death. And that is precisely where he belongs. So I didn't necessarily mean to open up on welfare and that, but let's take that and move along into minimum wage arguments. So we've got them crying now for a $15 minimum wage.
If you want $15 an hour, figure out how to get it. And really, if $15 an hour is like your high watermark, maybe you need to reevaluate how you think about life. And for that matter, if minimum wage is your high watermark, again, maybe you need to reevaluate how you think about life. Because, I mean, who wants to just do the minimum? I mean, I realize that's a largely rhetorical question, but, again, who wants to just do the minimum?
And more importantly, let's never forget that the minimum wage, if a man offers to pay you minimum wage, what he's saying is, if I could pay you less, I would. And that's okay. That's a fair statement. If I could pay you less, I would. Because the truth of the matter is, if a man is offering you minimum wage for a position, you're not worth minimum wage. If you're being offered minimum wage to come into a position, we're talking about an absolute entry-level position where you're coming in with no skill, you're coming in basically not able to contribute to the business that the man who's paying your bills is in the business of doing. He's bringing you in out of the goodness of his heart to allow you to learn how to perform the job. If within the first I think my dad said it was 60 days. Almost nobody makes it past 60 days without a raise for minimum wage, and that's very true. The number of people who work for minimum wage is very, very low, and the number of people who continue at minimum wage is much lower. In order to continue at minimum wage, you have to change jobs a lot, and that is a function of not performing the job well. It basically, at the end of the day, you're not worth minimum wage. If you were worth minimum wage, then you would be negotiating for the wages, for the salary that you want, with several different employers who were competing to hire you because you set some watermark, you set some high bar to be what is excellence in your industry. If you don't have a record that sets a high bar of excellence for your industry and show that you have value as an individual that can be added. Okay, everybody has value, they're all alive. Well, sure, I'll let you have that argument for this one for now, I suppose. It's fallacious and completely wrong, but also irrelevant. That's one that they like to go to. But everybody has value. No, everybody doesn't have value. Some people are so without value that it is almost worthwhile for us as valuable, productive humans stranded in a violent welfare state. It is almost worthwhile for us to pay them to stay out of our labor force because they are so without value that they're actually detrimental to the development of our economy. I would prefer that we just let them die. Men without value, life is value. Life is money. And I'll be doing a special on that exact statement, that one sentence. Life is money. That's a whole special, and once you see that one, you'll want to give me more money so that I can tell you more brilliant things. Because your life is absolutely, completely interchangeable for time, for money, for property, for wealth, just like any other currency. Life is simply a currency. It's another project, another product of another function of wealth.
Well, your life is more fulfilling if you have dignity, and being productive gives you dignity. I saw a commercial the other day, and it was a commercial for lawnmowers, But the guy cracks a beer at the end of the commercial, and the announcer says in a tagline that the beer you drink after you cut your own lawn tastes better than the beer you drink after somebody else does it, or something. But I actually kind of smiled at that because I happen to agree that if I go out and I cut my grass and I have a beer afterwards, it's freaking fantastic. There's no question that I have earned it, that I can sit and enjoy it because I've done something productive. And that's a really small-scale example, but work and working and doing things and producing things and either making a thing or providing a service give a deeper meaning to a person's life. It's not just about making $12 an hour, $15 an hour, $20 an hour and paying your bills. It's about the satisfaction of going out and doing a thing and using that thing to meet all your needs. And all of that is really lost in our modern society where, I mean, it's weird. People used to just want to be rich, and then people wanted to be rich and famous. And now people just want to skip straight to famous because that's the shortcut, baby. If you can just be famous, everything else will work out. And the deeper nature of how that plan will actually work, most of these people couldn't even tell you. But that does seem to be the thing. So many people want their Facebook page to go viral, their Instagram page to go viral. Because if it does, they might get endorsements and all this other mess. And it's so far removed from going out and doing a thing and being good at it. It used to be that you were a celebrity because you were so impressive in your field, you could not get around being a celebrity.
Right.
And now that is just not the case anymore. Excellence and fame are no longer tied together.
And let me just address that real quick. That's actually part of what I was just saying about the interchangeability of life, property, wealth, so on and so forth. Fame and power, call it political capital even, are similarly exchangeable currencies. And what I think has happened there is people have sort of, by seeing it happen a lot since the advent of the internet, the information age, and the internet celebrity, as it were, YouTube millionaires, Bitcoin millionaires, things like that. People in general, without a significant study of economics and economic mathematics and actually understanding how it works, have sort of intuited that they can in fact exchange fame or political capital for actual fiat currency that they can spend on consumer products. And of course, at the end of the day, for most of us, that's the extent to which we actually understand our wealth is something that we can exchange for a consumer product. If we can't chew it up and spit it out, shit it down the toilet, or throw it in the trash, then it's not actually a thing. But those things all come in some way from exchanging capital into our own bloodstreams.
Wow. Well, okay then. So we agree that you take everything away from a person by giving them everything. They no longer have want or need, and it's actually terrible for them. What's really funny about that is if you look at the big difference between the right and the left would tend to describe things as the freedom to, like the freedom to bear arms or the freedom to assemble. Yes. And the left describes things in terms of freedom from want, freedom from fear. I was actually really surprised the first time I went to Washington, D.C. and walked around and looked at all the monuments, and FDR has one of the biggest monuments there, and one of the largest parts of the monument is him saying his quote, freedom from want and freedom from fear. And um, that's really terrifying. Without going into a government big enough to give you everything, is big enough to take everything away, and so forth and so on. But so many people now in the welfare state are locked into this cycle where they're terrified of somehow giving up that freedom from one, because they don't have a whole lot, but their rent gets paid and their refrigerator gets filled up. And as long as that happens, it's easy to convince yourself you're doing okay, you're doing great, you might even be getting ahead. Because, it wasn't until just a couple of decades ago, even in this country, if you went broke, you went hungry. And that was a hell of a motivating factor to never go broke. So I don't necessarily know if I want the people that won't work to just die, but I wouldn't mind them skipping a couple of meals and seeing if all of a sudden they don't want to work very, very badly.
Yeah, see, well, we have a country now where even being entirely destitute and ending up homeless does not equal starving to death. Whenever I hear people talk about poverty in the United States, I'm not saying that there's not poverty, but what we view as poverty in the United States is just living free in paradise compared to what poverty is in much of the rest of the world. Quite frankly, homeless people in America, I've been to Afghanistan and seen people, in their villages that have their homes, and they have their bazaar, and they do business in the bazaar and whatnot, and they have a clearly lower quality of life than the homeless people who live in America. Even a total beggar in the States is cleaner and healthier, and has a longer life expectancy than just people in Afghanistan. I mean, just in general. Now, at the same time, you don't see what you would generally think of as homeless people over there because, well, basically they all are. The only cats over there rocking some real. Hey, brother. We got another entry here. I don't suppose you've been watching the show up to this point, have you, Rod?
No, I've been just watching it for the past half an hour, wondering what the damn link was.
Oh, and you found the link.
Yeah, I hadn't looked up that sorry guy that wanted the zoning laws. I thought you excluded me because I was going to rip his face off.
Oh, and you missed what I said about him, didn't you?
No, I didn't see that part. I got one eye open and one eye shut.
I looked into him a little bit. We were going to talk about old Tyler Truitt and how the government's trying to kick him off his land because he decided to live off the grid. But I did me a little research, and it looks to me like what we really have there is a case of a cat who's trying to skirt zoning laws and park a trailer in a neighborhood. So I don't know if there's more to it than that. When I saw that much of it, I decided I needed to do more research before I gave any speech or credit to it.
It took me about 8 seconds to get to the two. He bought about 2.5 acres and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Whatever, I feel for the guy. So you're talking about poverty now.
We was indeed talking about poverty.
And we're talking about the difference between poverty over here versus poverty, let's say, in Russia or Afghanistan. Now, I've seen people dumpster diving for food in Russia in the middle of the winter when it's negative 27 degrees centigrade outside. And, man, that's bad news. Everybody just looks at them like, what's your problem?
Yeah, like I was saying in Afghanistan, it's kind of like that. I was actually just saying that you don't really see over there what we would think of as homeless people, mostly because the quality of life, the general appearance and demeanor of basically everybody, with the exception of what we call power brokers, is roughly equivalent to what we think of as the homeless in America. Now, power brokers work a little differently in Afghanistan. Over there, most of us have seen some mob movies or some of that, and you hear the bad guy say things like, "The police, I own the police," and what he's really saying is a euphemism for he's bribing the police. And he's got dirty cops that work directly for him. Over there, when somebody says, "I own the police," he literally writes their official paycheck. He's not bribing them. He actually is legitimately the man that pays their bills. That's just how it's organized over there, which is a
I read an article,
bizarre twist on it.
I read an article many years ago that got into had these warlord types control the local area. It had something about a fasting dilemma in it. People had enough money to either feed all their kids or they could try and educate one of them. And the fasting dilemma was always resolved in favor of feeding all the kids, and therefore they were not educated, which is to be avoided, because that's just going to lead you into some sort of neo-feudalism. Well, what we're really talking about here is the imposition of a feudalism, the old way. That's what you're talking about. That's what, because they've never had anything modern, right?
Right. And so let's talk about feudalism and slavery for a moment. I've been doing some ancient philosophy stuff lately, and having some conversations with some of these college kids, and we talk about things like how Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, they lived in a time when they were speaking about freedom, liberty, what a proper government looks like, what human equality looks like, what ethics look like, what good metaphysics look like. But they were having these conversations and forming these opinions in a world that included slavery. And that conversation gets a little muddy when we're sitting in this room with all these college students whose only understanding of slavery is what we had in the United States so long ago. And what they don't realize, what they don't understand, is that chattel slavery that we had then was a novel concept. It was only when chattel slavery came to the United States, the concept of it was only a few decades old. Prior to that, much of slavery, until basically in Africa, there was when the slave trades began between tribes that used POWs as slaves and would trade them with each other, and then basically opened the slave trading markets to send slaves off to work to just sell slaves off. That's not how slavery worked. In ancient Rome and Greece, slavery was your answer to the welfare state. The way slavery worked is if you were born a slave, what you were is you had been born to a family that couldn't afford to feed you because they didn't work and earn. They had not earned fortunes by which to work. And currency was in its infancy. Economy was in its infancy. And so instead of the state paying something akin to food stamps, as they were first in the early development of the ideas of bread and circus, the slave was essentially, hey, you rich man, here's your welfare case. You're responsible for the care and feeding of these people. And it's perfectly reasonable for you to expect them to conduct services, cleaning the home, tending the fields, working the garden, working the livestock, things of that nature, in exchange for the room and board. That's kind of what the slave concept was that far back. And what's especially important about that is, what's especially important about that distinction is that under that system of what they called slavery, and distinct from the chattel slavery, is those slaves lived in that position, but they were able to earn freedom. They could become freed men. And freed men would also be expected to own slaves precisely because it was part of their civic duty under that system to feed someone that couldn't feed themselves. So slavery under that old way, as it were, was a very, very different creature.
There was a way to get out of it, though.
Mm-hmm.
You could earn your way out of it eventually, and there were things like the Jubilees, et cetera, et cetera. The Russians ended the experiment with the age-old experiment with serfdom. I believe it was 1861. I was reading some Tolstoy the other night, late Tolstoy, and the conditions just weren't really that good. I mean, it's like, if you can buy your way out of it, that means you got to be outstanding, right? You got to do something to get out from up under it. Now, we've all had thoughts about things that are threatening us. I mean, we don't exactly want to have the yoke put around our neck, now do we?
He is not wasting any time on the cold bath.
Hey Rod, real quick, are you seeing the chat line that's coming up the left side of the window? You're on your laptop?
Yeah. It's just got an American in there.
But you see what he's typing to you?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Just checking, because an American is in a loud ass cafe, so we don't get to hear him tonight.
Oh.
Gentlemen, I am gonna have to call it. I have stuff happening, but it was a ton of fun. Yeah, everything's fine.
All right, brother. Good night.
Good night.
So I got my American shirt on.
Yeah, I like that. No, this shirt is properly American.
Okay, that looks like you got in Hawaii or something. Sam's Club. Sam's Club silk.
Oh hell no. This is. I sent the wife to Joann's and she bought a bolt of fabric and made me a shirt.
Well, Cameron left us. That's too bad. I was wanting to beat him up. Missed it by that much. But I read an article today. It was about the Supreme Court.
Wait. John, I had a sleeveless T-shirt on in which I was working earlier. I put this shirt on for the show.
What do you do with an ex-Bohemian liberal with no job, life skills, and a crap work ethic? Well, you provide him with a hoe, right? That's what a friend of mine was telling me a minute ago. You provide him with something. What do you do? Most of us are going to be interested in forming unions with other people. Remember, I was discussing with you earlier about how you structure something so that people could work together in an investment strategy. The investment being lives and sacred honor, among other things, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're gonna change your diet away from this American nightmare into the diet of the American dream, then that's a pretty stark change in diet, right? You're going to become more Jeffersonian in your endeavors. Remember, Jefferson wanted everybody to be both educated and effective, right? Practical and theoretical at the same time. Very innovative. So you remember I was discussing that it's possible, for example, to submit the property condominium, right, as a means of having a better hippie economy. Remember?
Ooh, Rod, your audio just cut out on us. Not sure what happened there.
Is it there now? Is it there now? Hello.
Yep, we got you now. And what were you saying again?
What was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about changing the diet from the nightmare to the dream.
Right. How do you have a better hippie commune? Well, the hippie commune is kind of like some unstudied imagination of how to go about free living and all this kind of stuff. Okay. Well, I'm not gonna be joining the hippie commune, nor are you, right? And how do you do it one better? You see what I'm saying?
Well, let me throw this out there as a this is more of a band-aid, but it's a band-aid to build on. I lived in I don't know if I'd call it a hippie commune because, well, we were still a pretty conservative group of guys, but I lived in a house when I was in my early 20s. Steve and I. Steve's one of our other hosts on the show. A lot of you guys have already seen him. The both of you know him. So one day, Steve and I packed our shit, drove across the state out to Savannah, got a crappy little extended stay hotel, moved into it, lived there for a couple of months while we worked to build up a little capital and got us a house. And then Steve and his wife and his kids and I and two other adults, moved into that house. So we had 5 working adults living in a ranch-style house right down the street from the mall in Savannah, Georgia. And what we had was 5 working adults splitting an $800 a month rent 5 ways, splitting $400 a month in groceries 5 ways, splitting everything such that nobody was paying more than about $300 or $400 a month for everything, for the house, for the utilities, for comms, for cell phones, internet, cable.
I did the same thing when I was in college, man. I rented a house, and I got me some ne'er-do-wells to live with me that were taking classes and stuff like that. And I make them give me money. Here, give me your money. Give me your money, and I'll make sure you don't. You can drink the rest of it for all I care, right? But I'd put away enough money for everybody having enough to eat. And you know, I had a crazy Canadian roommate. He had a motto: "Drink, don't eat." And he had a favorite bush in this lady's front yard that was halfway between the bar and the house. And it'd be about 2 in the morning. We'll go looking for him. There he was, asleep up under this lady's tree. He almost made it home. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. You know, but we're talking about folks that have some notion of being more responsible than that. You know, the hippie company thing.
My point was, my whole point with that was, hey kids, here's an easy solution. Get you started. Get set off on life the right way. Get out of high school. You get into college. If that's the path you go on, do this. Move into a house with 4 or 5 other people who are working, earning, and chipping in. And guys, that puts you on a great start, a good straight and narrow to get down the road to being an adult without piling yourself up a huge chunk of debt.
Let me tell you where I got
that's just a start.
Let me tell you where I got this condominium idea from. Okay, long time ago, I was telling my brother how much cheaper really nice houses are here in Atlanta than they were in Connecticut, where UPS was located. And apparently he got up there telling the folks down there, and they started studying it. Next thing you know, UPS is moving to town. Yeehaw. They called him. He called my dad. My dad called his law firm. The law firm called the governor and everybody else. And UPS moved to Atlanta. Off of just a little spark of an idea, right? You guys could live like kings in Atlanta for what you're living like up yonder. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they had a $500,000 house, but it looked like something in the mill section of town in Atlanta, right? Little video house built a long time ago. Versus moving down here and getting something in the country club at South if they wanted it. You know, big old 5,000 square foot house and have it paid for and still have equity, you know, from the sale of what they had up yonder. See, it's a paradigm shift. It's a Pareto move if you want to get into economics. You're going to a much higher level of efficiency. So I was going to make a point. We're flowing, UPS flowed us right on into, my reward for so much of that UPS title work coming to the law firm I was working at, which they had me run the president's mansion. He was buying him a house over there in the fancy section of town, and I got looking at it. It was 7 acres with a fancy house on it, and they'd submitted this big property to the Condominium Act. And so it was really done because they had a road that went across a creek or two, and they had some actual bridge type stuff that had to be maintained. So that's a little bit more than CAM, common area maintenance. And so whoever did it decided they'd submit it to the Condominium Act. And I was like, it doesn't have to be some little hovel dwellings. And so that's what got me thinking of using the Condominium Act in a more advanced way. But people wouldn't necessarily, we have these investment opportunities, limited partnership being okay, the C corp, the S corp, the LLC,
mm-hmm.
right, and all of those produce actual pieces of paper, a stock certificate, right, or partnership certificate, shares and stuff like that with bylaws and rules, and all of these things have been heavily litigated, and courts have decided, particularly with condominiums. It's established. The court knows what to do with it if something goes wrong, right? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
If you confuse these people at the court, they're gonna find against you every time. You see what I'm saying? So you go with something that makes sense. Now we're talking about, I'm going to be looking for 100 families, and you'll probably be looking for 100 families where you are. You see what I'm saying? And I'm going to ask these people to give up a lot of money because they don't have a lot of money, right? What would a lot of money be? $10,000 would be the cost of a new car. If you got 100 people giving up $10,000, how many dollars is that?
A bunch of them. Enough to get somewhere.
Enough to get somewhere. If everybody decides that they were serious enough about something to put a used car into the deal, or if they're serious enough about something to put $1,000 in it.
Wait, Rod, hold on. The audio got money. Give it a second.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I'm going to mute your video for a minute and let the feed catch up.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to mute your audio there, Rod. Video.
That's fine.
Okay. No, we're still coming through the
yeah, it says bomb. That's great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're coming through kind of rough.
You want me to turn off my camera? I'll turn my camera off. Let's take that. I'll turn the camera off.
No, I don't think we're having the camera. I think we're having the feed right now. How do I sound coming on your end?
You sound great. You sound good.
Yeah, we're having a problem with the processing coming from your end.
Are we still having a problem, or did it go away?
Turn your speakers down here. I hear me coming back into me. That's a little better.
I got headphones if you like.
Yeah, do that. Sorry.
Sorry. Better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay. So I've got a separate microphone here. You probably can't see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sitting hello radio.
Yeah, Rod, this is my microphone.
What is that? Oh, okay. You bought a blue.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They're cheap. It was only like $40-50 for what it is. Worth the money. I love that.
I'm thinking about getting a Rode.
Oh yeah.
But that's just because I've got a use for something like all that piano playing and stuff I do, trumpet playing, blah blah blah. But anyway, I was talking about investments. Right now, Wall Street's got everybody afraid to invest their money in something other than Wall Street. And Wall Street has the worst investments that one could possibly imagine. And now it comes to recovery.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm in a leads group with my local chamber of commerce, and I go to a meeting every Wednesday morning. We're like Business Owners Anonymous, except we all say our names. It's fun. I enjoy that group. You got an Edward Jones guy there, great guy, I love the guy. But he clearly knows what he's doing. He clearly knows his business. And every week he comes in here telling us that the world's not ending. It's not ending. And it's like, yeah, but you've had to remind us that the world's not ending a lot over the last 2 years.
The world is not ending. Okay, tell me exactly why is the stock market over 10,000 right now? Why currently is it up over 17,000?
No, I think your microphone's giving up on us now, Rod. We may have to. I'm not getting good audio out of you at all, Rod. I can barely understand you. Nope. Hey, it may be. We've had a pretty good show tonight. It may be time to call it a night. Catch us again next week. Uh-oh. No, still a lot of distortion. Sounds like you're talking to me through auto-tune.
Okay. How about now?
Oh, that's much. Ooh.
Which one do you like?
That's much better. That's much better right there.
Is that better?
Yeah.
That one? So I was talking about what's the purpose of Wall Street, right? The purpose of Wall Street is to effectively match people with investment opportunities. Well, they don't do that anymore. That's not hello. That's not part of their gig. You know what I mean? Hey, Craig.
Hey, Rod. Hey, Chris.
How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Good.
Uh-oh, we just lost the American.
Did I take his place?
He dropped off right after you came in.
I thought John liked me.
He does.
Keep going. I will jump in once I catch on.
All right, well, Rod was just talking about Wall Street.
Yeah, I was saying that Wall Street isn't really doing much other than feathering their own nest. And there's no reason to use those people if their interest is going to be superior to your interest with your money. You give them money, and then they get to clip the coupons and vote the proxies, right? You don't get much. You don't get much from them. And I'm gonna try to get John to come back.
Well, I can tell you this, Rod. So many people are very, very ignorant about what happens to their money, where their money goes, how banks use their money. I worked at a bank for 2 years from 2010 to 2012, and people were shocked when they came in and wanted to do a massive withdrawal, and we said, we don't have that kind of money in this bank. They were shocked. What did you do with my money? I gave it to you. Where is it?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the folks in Cyprus and in Greece were even more disturbed to find out that their bank deposit was actually a loan to the bank. And, you know, and if we didn't have, and meaning, of course, that we could take a shave and a haircut here one day.
Yep.
Some of this $20 trillion.
It makes you wonder. I mean, it obviously makes you worry, but what is our backup? Is it the gold standard? Should we invest in gold? You know, what do you do if the dollar plummets, especially if Bernie Sanders gets elected by some crazy coincidence and by another crazy coincidence gets a lot of his batshit crazy things passed? The dollar's not going to be worth 20 cents.
Well, I don't think we have to worry about Bernie at this point. He's pretty done. I think
But that's why the stock market's up as high as it is because of continual dollar devaluations. They simply reprice everything. It's not that the stock market's doing so wonderfully. It's that the dollar's being debased. And folks don't really realize it.
I'd like to point out that I too am very, very much ignorant about what happens to my money. But the the level to which some people didn't understand that the bank is basically not just there under their mattress, except more secure.
The Bank of Sealy Posturepedic.
Right. Their money was actually being shipped out, and it was actually being invested. And people are still shocked when they come across those old dollar bills that say silver certificate on them. They're like, "What in the world is a silver certificate?" And I'm like, "That means at some point, each one of these dollars represented a small piece of silver in, I guess, what would have been Fort Knox at that point."
Mm-hmm.
In fact, technically, that dollar that says silver certificate on it is not exactly actually a dollar anymore.
No, I'll give you $1 for it.
It's not a Federal Reserve note. I'll give you
$1 for it if you come across one.
I'm hanging on to those.
It's worth an ounce. And an ounce was running 1745.
There was a cat. There was a cat posted a video on YouTube. Ran a little experiment.
Isn't that what it was? Yeah.
There was a cat posted a video on YouTube. Was running a little experiment to show how ignorant Americans are of the value of real money. Dude, I was mind blown. This guy goes walking down the street. This guy's out on the street in front of, I shit you not, in front of a coin collector store. Right? He is in front of a coin collector's.
He's a troll.
In one hand, he has a dozen or so Hershey's chocolate bars, and in the other hand, he has a 10-ounce silver bar. And he is literally stopping people on the street and saying, "Hey, you're a lucky winner today. Would you like a 10-ounce Hershey's bar or this 10-ounce silver bar?" And every single one of them took the Hershey's bar, and they all said things like, "Well, I wouldn't know what to do with a bar of silver." And one guy actually said, one chick actually asked him, "Is the chocolate real?" I almost hurt myself laughing when I heard her say that. I was like, you dumb sons of bitches. That's a $1 candy bar. You were literally asked to choose between a $1 bill and a $200 bill, and you chose wrong.
Well, yeah, I guess it would cost about $200. Even though the spot market price was $17.45.
Yeah, okay, $175.
No, that's if you're selling. If you're buying, it's going to cost more.
Yes.
Yeah. The spot market was $17.45 per ounce. Multiply that by 10. That'd be more than a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Cheeseburger and Pepsi.
I mean, it ain't dinner at Bones, but it's a step in the right direction.
Dinner at Bones. You talking about Atlanta?
Nope, you're muddying up on me again, Rod.
I said you talking about Atlanta again.
Yeah, dinner at Bones is $4.
Okay.
Period.
Is Rod still with us?
Yeah.
So when
his audio is breaking up on us pretty bad. Go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to ask to catch up. I should have talked to you offline and got a sense of what was going on, because I tuned in not too long after you guys got started tonight, and it was about and you were talking about people who could not afford their meals but expected them.
Yep. I vote we give them all we feed them all a very steady, strict diet of ball bats.
Explain.
I thought I want to hit them in the face with ball bats. It wasn't much more complicated than that.
Okay. Forgive me for thinking like a pacifist. I don't know who the hell I'm talking to. Just to make sure.
Honestly, if we just dedicated ourselves to the proposition that everybody who needs a meal deserves to be provided with a steady diet of ball bats, we would solve our poverty and starvation problems in just a few weeks.
Oh yeah, it would not take long.
I'm hungry. Problem solved.
I'm actually making sure that we're live right now because I just got a text from my wife that said she could not get the video to play.
Really?
I've got it on my iPhone here, and it is just all I'm getting is a load screen.
Odd. Well, in that case, I'm gonna see if I can pull her up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, with my apologies, it's we have 0 viewers right now, and that this may be why.
Well, when I tuned in earlier, I was literally watching you live, and it still said 0 viewers. But if you had one quite early on and it dropped out, that was me.
Well, I'm looking at the side of my head pointed at my iPad right now, running a little behind.
Yep, we're good.
iPad right now.
I'm actually making sure that we're live right now. Yes, what's showing up right now is actually me talking about us being live right now. So what we're doing at this point is boring people.
Yeah, sorry guys. For the 2 viewers that just joined us, hi, thanks for being here. We were just having a little technical difficulty. We had a little audio hiccup and a little video hiccup. We were trying to get it taken care of, and I think we have solved it based on the fact that we suddenly have viewers now. Thank you. All right. So, and Rod is still working on fixing his microphone situation. So, Cade, basically the conversation has been about, tonight we've been talking about poverty, welfare, and solutions. We've talked a little bit about the old Savannah Commune as a solid model for young people to begin their journey into adulthood without building a great deal of debt in the process.
Mm-hmm. Because communism works on a very, very small scale surrounded by people you trust.
Yes, communism works for 10 people at a time.
Max, maybe 12. I mean, seriously, it can't even be a community.
No, I think 100. I think 100 people could be close enough, as long as those 100 people, as long as amid them, you have a couple of people who have enough violence in them to truly deal with your bad actors, because bad actors are a very serious threat.
Well, if you have Galt's Gulch, then sure.
Yeah, that's basically exactly. Yeah, Galt's Gulch is a perfect example of that idea. I mean, the Galt's Gulch situation, it was you got.
Although they were strict capitalists.
They were very strict capitalists. Even as dear friends, I would happily loan you my car, except I wouldn't loan you my car. I would let you rent my car for a reasonable rate.
Exactly.
That's perfectly functionable, perfectly reasonable, and very well penned. Yeah, honestly, my only problem with Ayn Rand is I think she was foolish to ignore the actual importance of mysticism. The importance of magic, the value of religion and faith in philosophy, when you're talking about something like the objectivist ethic like that, at the end of the day, there is shit we don't understand. And if we don't have something like, oh, it's magic, to deal with, that is beyond what we can understand. There's a point at which we can there's no longer a need to explain something because you've gone too far down. Why is 1 + 1 2? It just is. That you can't answer that question. There is not an answer for the question, why is 1 + 1 2?
No, you have to have absolutes to build everything else on anyway.
At some point you have to say, because Daddy said so, sweetheart. But why? Because Daddy said so. And it's not that I'm tired of answering the questions. I am, but that's beside the point. There's a point at which you have to stop answering questions. Well, in the same way as you go up and up and up, there's a point at which the questions are so hard to answer that they're not even worth answering anymore. Wittgenstein explained it. He said everything that can be said simply, and anything that can be said simply is not worth saying at all. Anything that really, really matters cannot actually be spoken. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but being able to say things about those more important, the ultimate good, what is God, that kind of stuff. That all goes back to having some way to refer to that thing.
Right. Well, expand upon that, if you will, because I need some clarification on it. I'm sure some of our viewers do as well, about what Wittgenstein actually said. Can you talk about that and tell us exactly what he meant and why you disagree with it?
I don't disagree entirely. Okay, so the way he said it was essentially anything that can be said clearly. Anything that can be said clearly is not terribly important. And he is talking even about higher math. Anything that's really important, and by really important, what he's talking about are what is the greater good, what is the source of all, the big philosophy questions, why are we here, what's the meaning of life, that kind of stuff, is so complicated that we can't even articulate it. It cannot even be articulated by people. I disagree with that generally, but not entirely on this. We have religion, we have faith, we have philosophy, we have forays to move into these concepts. Rod, I'm going to have to mute you until you get caught up a little bit, because I'm coming back to me over your feed, and it's hurting. So as we explore sciences, for example, physics, Pythagorean ideas, or early Aristotelian metaphysics, that all develops and gets replaced over time with other stuff. Newtonian physics develops as useful. We build trains and industry, and then Einsteinian physics supplants Newtonian physics. But even though Einstein finds this whole new system, discovers these new kind of laws of the universe and understandings of the way things work that actually prove that many parts of the whole Newtonian physics proposals on which the creation of existing technology was based are actually incorrect. Even though he proved that wrong, that didn't make all the trains suddenly stop, which tells us that there's some sort of capacity for man to intuit what is true and correct and functional. We can have a concept of the world, and it can be quite wrong and be proved to be wrong. But when it is proved to be wrong, and that proof, which proves that the previous concept of the world was incorrect, allows us to advance and create new and more complex and more useful or more efficient technologies, old coal trains being replaced by combustion engines, things of that nature. Just proving that what we believed before was wrong does not make it such that the technology that was created under that belief doesn't work. The technology still works. If you build a steam engine and fill it with coal, it will still operate. But at the same time, we are capable of losing understanding. Given today's technology, you cannot take an engineer with an AutoCAD machine and an unlimited number of cranes and recreate the pyramid at Giza. The only way that's ever been done, as far as we understand it historically, is by a slave labor force using scaffolding to stack those bricks. There are some engineering problems that exist in constructing the pyramid in the way that it was constructed at Giza that we cannot reproduce with modern technology. And there's no reason for it as far as we can tell. The math that existed then still exists. Some of it has been replaced by new theories. And I don't know, somewhere in there, the answer that we have to come to is magic. And the reason we have to come to that answer of magic is because we have to call it something so that we can remember that we don't understand it. But it's also important that we do not ignore it. We cannot just ignore something because we don't understand it. But we are creatures of habit, and one of those habits is the habit of categorization. And so if we are unable to categorize a thing, then calling it magic, calling it God, or calling it faith, or calling it mysticism, lets us take it and place it over to the side so that we can pick it up occasionally and study it and hopefully learn more from it, but we can pick it up and get it out of the way, and we can move forward with what we do understand, so that we can create technology and we can create systems and build things like, I don't know, free countries and successful economic enterprises.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, you in there?
Hey, that's much better. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I switched to a laptop.
Yeah, you sound much better. It's much better to hear.
Yeah.
Much easier to hear you now.
I'm trying to figure out what. Is this the microphone?
Say again?
I'm tapping the webcam. Is that the microphone?
Nope.
Or is it on the computer somewhere? It's on the computer somewhere?
There it is.
There it is.
Okay, so the microphone's on the computer somewhere.
You found it.
Well, you found it. It's like, no, there it is. We'll just have to proceed without me having a webcam today, because this computer doesn't seem to have one. I tried plugging one into it. I'll get it working before it's over. And that's just all there's to it. Oops. I was just saying I came back. I hadn't left yet.
Well, Rod, were you hearing what I was just saying? Digging through the Wittgenstein and
yeah.
We dug into a little existentialism there for a minute. Accidental.
Oh yeah. What's going on?
That was accidental existentialism. I did not mean to tangent off that way. I've had it on the brain though. I've been writing a paper.
Well, yeah, it's good that you're doing that. It'll come in useful one day. It'll be good for you. When I left a little while ago because my stuff started messing up, what were we talking about then? It was the 100 people, getting people to cooperate, right?
Yes.
And watching people not cooperate.
People can have an effective community as long as you've got a couple of enforcer people in the group that are able to recognize and eject bad actors. I mean, a body with a cancer needs a surgery.
Yeah, you got a white blood cell.
Yep.
But that's the reason I was going with go with something that's known, that's been adjudicated, right? Like the condominium thing, like the actual C Corp. Those things are, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can do a simple business deal with folks. It's just people are not accustomed to buying stocks that aren't publicly traded right now, right? I mean the idea of going down to the local car dealership and asking them if they'd save some stocks in the Ford dealership shouldn't shock too many people, or the local tractor company, right?
Right.
Well, what would be wrong with buying stocks if somebody's wanting to start the tractor company, or if they wanted to start a cannery? Useful things. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Right now, people don't understand that it's completely legitimate to buy an ownership interest in something that is not a publicly traded company, right? It might be riskier, but what could be riskier than buying Lehman in the summer of 2008?
and that's right.
And who would have ever? And who besides me would have ever thought that Lehman Brothers was going to go bankrupt? I sent emails to people saying that Lehman was going to go bankrupt starting in March of 2008. Now, how can little old dorky dweeby me come up with stuff like that? It's just because I don't buy their paradigm. And I'm sitting here looking at them, and my presumption is that they're not being honest with people, right? And not being honest with people, Lehman Brothers was targeted, victimized, and assassinated, right? But then there's another way of looking at it. It was also part of an overall model, and what were they modeling on? They were modeling on the collapse of the French force about 1880, and I found a white paper, strikingly, sometime after the collapse that had been written before the collapse that was talking about this French bourse and what the French did to do the first modern time bailout. You see what I'm saying with that?
Mm-hmm.
You and I haven't discussed this before. I can provide the paper. It's still up there, and it's discussing how the French went rectifying the same situation. They cultivate these problems. There's no such thing as a accidental recession. I mean, when was the last time we actually had a recession or some sort of economic downturn that was due to something like Mother Nature? Well, probably in the 1870s when the big freeze came and it froze all the cattle in the prairies. But we haven't had anything like that since Second World War, right? So people want to have the best for themselves, right? You want to have the best for you, right? When you go to buy a gun, you're going to buy the best gun you can find, right? And the same is true of the ammo, right? Right? And you and your friends could set up a company that purchased guns and sold them, right, under a dealer's license agreement, right? You have to get a dealer's license from the government, but you could set up a company that had plate glass in the front and safe in the back to sell zombie shooters. Does all that mean? Yeah, but what we're talking about here is we can't even get people to do a basic deal now.
Well, your basic American, your average American, doesn't understand what deal making is. Okay, let me hit Trump for a second on this. So Trump is blowing people's minds. There's a lot of people that are just jumping up and down. We love him, we love him, we love him. He speaks his mind. He says to hell with political correctness, blah, 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 blah. And there's a bunch of people who are losing their shit, just completely blown away. Oh, this guy's crazy. He says this and he says this and he makes these outlandish claims. And we're literally talking about the man that wrote the book, the most purchased and read book on conducting business deals. He wrote it 30 years ago. More than 30 years ago.
Of course he did.
And it's still the most read and purchased book on doing business deals. And in the book, he lays out, he talks about doing deals between people. He talks about what he does on an average day, which mostly means getting up at dark 30, having a good breakfast, and then working balls to the wall until 9 o'clock at night and going to bed around 11 and then lather, rinse, repeat, mañana. But when he starts talking about how to make a deal, he says, well, first you say ban all Muslims, and then you say, okay, maybe not all of them, and okay, how about just a couple of them? You're good with a couple of them? Well, then, here's a handshake. We've got to do. He wrote this book more than 30 years ago, and literally lays it out. You open with this big outlandish ask. You ask for much, 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 much more than you can ever get, because you're going to negotiate down from there. If you start with your negotiation with what you want, then you're going to come back away from that. If you start with way more, you can negotiate down to what you're looking for and maybe get a little bonus.
Wait a minute. Now who's running this? Who's running
motherfuckers that don't read books.
but you're talking about using Wall Street still. No Wall Street. You don't need them. You don't have to convince. You don't have to convince people that you don't need to use Wall Street at this point. You have to convince them that they can do something other with their money other than just give it to Wall Street and steal it from them, right? And they don't care that if you take a moderate salary, if you're forming a corporation, that what they don't want is people taking these immodest salaries that they're insisting on giving themselves, and these immodest bonuses that they're giving themselves for doing nothing except stealing money. But if a guy's going to set up a gun shop with plate glass in the front and a safe in the back, right? And you've got a business plan written out that says, well, here's how much it costs to buy the guns, and here's what the taxes are. You know, a completely fleshed out business plan times an integration of 100 different businesses that might be formed by 100 different families. You see what I'm saying? Yep. It's a vertical and horizontal integration all at the same time. All of it privately owned in some hinterland area like where I live. So that these people could have something, right? You know, a guy down here was telling me that he thought I should become a grant writer. And I'm like, well, yeah. He says, but the people that are already getting their grants are very, very quiet about it because apparently a given county only has a certain amount of money that the government's willing to put into it under the agricultural department programs and et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, yeah, imagine that. They're going to suck it all up, and then they're going to tell you all that they're getting it even, right? Well, they're not doing anybody any good. Okay, so just, it's time to weigh in. Hello, we have a way in, and y'all got a way out. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
100 families. 100 families here, 100 families over yonder, 100 families up over there. So we got this little broadcast. You've got the absolute right idea, right? And these little discussions aren't being conducted on some level of BS or something like that. You're talking about actually doing something worth doing, right? And this is very similar to the kind of stuff that we discussed back years ago, right? The bald-headed guy started showing kids there's another way to do stuff, right? And now it's not just another way to do stuff. It's like an imperative.
It's like what?
It's an imperative. You just have to do it. You can't not do it. You have to have your own business. You have to become a capitalist. You cannot trust a Social Security check. It will not be there.
Yeah, let me tell a little story. When I was a kid in high school, boys, I'm sorry you're going to get bored for a minute because I'm talking to the viewer. We've got one viewer, but this video will be seen by between 50 and 100 people tonight after we go off the air. That's been our running number lately. About 50 to 100 people are watching the show every Friday night.
That's just me. I turn it on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off.
Well, no, I know there's at least one more guy, my battle buddy. Hey Ritter, when you watch this show tomorrow, give me a call. Let me know if you ever made warrant, because the last I knew you were staff sergeant. But I seem to remember you becoming a Mr. somewhere in there, and fuck yeah, that's good work for you, brother. I appreciate it. But anyway, so I'm gonna tell you a little story. Way back when I was a black bearded young man in high school. I worked a bunch of food service jobs. I worked assistant manager gigs at a couple of pizza joints. I worked as a butcher and a dishwasher at a barbecue joint for a while. Did a lot of food service jobs, and I was bored out of my ever-loving skull when I was in high school. Oh God! I mean, reading assignments that I would hear people complain about were 5 or 10 minutes off my nose and just not worth my time to even do. I remember particularly sitting in an economics class one time, and our I almost said professor, but she was not. Our teacher asked the question, "What is fiat currency?" Because we were supposed to be memorizing little data wands that we could regurgitate on a written exam. And she asked the class, "What is fiat currency?" And I raised my hand and I said, "Oh, It's debt currency where the dollar no longer represents actual money, but it represents a debt that somebody has traded to you in exchange for something that you didn't have to trade it for. And somebody said, "What?" And the teacher said, "Well, no, he's right, but we're not going to deal with that here." Well, way back then, I was popping into a Waffle House, 7 or 8 nights a week. Sometimes I'd be there more than once in an evening. And I had a bad habit of dropping into a little Waffle House in the middle of the night, ordering a cup of coffee, a piece of pie, and reading a book or getting caught up talking about stuff. And I would go so far as to say that I got a great deal more education in books that I was buying from Barnes & Noble and reading at the Waffle House than the public education system is even capable of generating. At that time, I had gotten myself to a point that I was assistant manager or manager in these restaurants, and at that time in my early understanding, that made me feel like I was the boss, and I really enjoyed being in that position. Not so much trying to lord it over somebody, but I appreciated that with the responsibility came additional earning, came a little more money. When most of my peers were earning that minimum wage, which is supposed to be for high school students, or a little bit above, I was $3, $4, $5 an hour above that, and that was a point of pride for me. I have never accepted minimum wage. Every time I've ever applied for a job and been offered minimum wage, I've said, you can offer me another dollar an hour over that, or I'll go find somebody else to work for. Even when I was a kid, obviously now I'm not going to get out of bed for minimum wage. I've worked too hard to get past that point. Some of you have not. And if you have not, for example, if you are unemployed and need to have a job and do not have a job, then you are not too good to wait tables and serve fries. But at that point, I started to understand what it was to climb a ladder. I got out into the real world a bit more, and I worked with this mean old bald-headed guy doing some slamology and making a bunch of noise in a quiet courthouse, where it was funny how people would just call my cell phone and ask how much money I wanted them to give me. It was a pretty neat place to be for a little while. And then 9/11, and I went into electrical and into the military. When I came out of the Army, I decided to go into business for myself, be an entrepreneur, and I almost lost my ass the first couple of years doing it. Worked myself to absolute exhaustion to build something, so that I own my work. I am my boss. If I want to go and sit down on the sofa and take a nap with my baby boy at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a work day, I can do that because I worked my ass off to get there. And just like you were saying a moment ago, Rod, people are starting to wake up and learn that as the world is now, if you're going to be anything, then you basically need to be an entrepreneur. You can climb the ladder, you can climb the corporate ladder and get yourself up into your little 6-figure income and some golden handcuffs, healthcare benefits and whatnot. But if you really want to achieve something, you must build it. Now, old Barry O got a lot of flack a few years ago when he said, "You didn't build that business. You didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. Oh, you couldn't have done it without roads. You couldn't have done it without a bank. You couldn't have done it without this. You couldn't have done it without that. Blah, blah, blah. Some teacher set you on the right path. Some this did this. Some so-and-so did such and such." Well, all of those things are moderately true. But let me ask you this question. For every one of me, how many people didn't? For every one of me that had access to those good teachers, not a lot of great teachers out there, guys. Not a lot of great teachers out there.
Well, Auger.
But how many?
We can answer the question right off the bat. You were one of 3 kids that I knew the whole time that I was going around with all them books that actually listened. And that was it. And nobody else wanted to do shit. And where are they all at? Well, they're hanging out here on the Brushfire mine. Every one of them started reading real serious books. I mean, they're not averse. They'll read Galbraith, they'll read Rifkin, they'll read Machiavelli, and they'll actually read this stuff, right? Where else have you seen it? Where else is there going to be something like this where these folks is out here talking? And it's because they want to. It's not because they're sorry, right? They're trying to raise themselves up and like be somebody and do something, and they want to be honest, and they don't want to hurt nobody. That's what y'all about. Nothing wrong with it.
And you know, I can think of the names of several of the people that ran into you in those same circles that we were just talking about, and I know where they are. And I'm not gonna pour mouth them, but they were definitely offered a chance to learn some serious shit, and just didn't. They just didn't.
Okay, but now we got to circle back around to them again. Yeah, I was talking to John about what you do with these kind of folks that don't want to listen. And you have to deal with the people you know, and we have to accumulate 100 families. If you're going to have investment capital and you're going to do something, you got to get a certain number of people to cooperate with you to a certain extent, right? You just cannot do it all alone, because the task is too big. It's everything I can do to take care of Mr. Hank, keep this house going, right? Watch the dog, cook the food, clean the house, et cetera, et cetera. And but it's 24-hour responsibility, right? So it's just border. I mean, I could get busy and do some other things if I was looking for some other things to do, like this. Now I found this. Hello. This is like you planted a tree 20 years ago, and oh wow, that tree grew up. Right? And we got these people that want to come around, and there's interest in it, right? It's precisely, Johnny Appleseed, It's like, well, this can go somewhere. And that's what I was telling y'all all back then. And that's what those books that y'all were reading back then were saying, too. Because it wasn't just me. It's not like I'm some smart guy, right? I was just showing y'all some different books that nobody was going to show you. You see the difference? I'm not claiming credit for y'all's success. Y'all's success was you read the books when I asked you to, and you understood them, and then learned. Does that make sense? It doesn't have nothing hardly to do with me at all, other than I told y'all, hey, there's something over yonder. Right?
Right.
But you took it up, and now you're getting a degree in philosophy on top of all this other, and everybody else that's showing up is also doing stuff, right?
Yeah, but let's be fair. I'm only getting a degree in philosophy because it's entertaining. I just happen to enjoy it.
Why do you think I studied music and piano? Yeah.
Rod, I hate to admit it, but I haven't played my trumpet in years. I know exactly what it is. I just got to play. But I live in the suburbs. I mean, imagine me walking outside in the middle of the day and playing my trumpet next to the golf course.
I commuted it. That's what I do. I played at church for Christmas. I played 3 different little hymns out of the hymn book. We Three Kings, dee, 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 on the B-flat trumpet, And okay, and they said it was loud, and I was like, well, good. It's a trumpet. It's supposed to be a little bit loud. Yeah. What'd you expect? So I'm supposed to be playing the darn thing because I used to teach a drum and bugle corps.
This was at a church, Rod?
It's a war instrument.
Yeah, you're at a church. You just tell them, it brought down the walls of Jericho, right?
Yeah, but I'm not going to bring the walls down from within while I'm in there.
No.
I'll have to go outside first.
But you won't look down a wall, keep walking.
You know, how's that song go? Insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain. You know, don't be in the house bringing the house down on top of you. We talk about building the house up. Get a sawmill. Put some of these meth heads to work. Here y'all go. Y'all want some money so you can go get you some meth? We'll give you about $5 an hour. No, you know, we're way out here. You can't steal nothing. We'll drive you back into town, give you some money, and you can get rocked up if you want to.
I had this idea of opening a facility, put some barracks houses in it, build a model village, build a little village that was a model of something you might run into in Afghanistan or Iraq out in sector. And make it an airsoft theme park where soldiers could go to conduct operations, and you basically invite all the homeless people you can find to come and live there, and your operating cost is feed them. And just, hey guys, here's a bed, here's a roof, here's a chow hall, and here's a pair of safety glasses. Good luck.
Here, put this little cushiony vest on. We're gonna shoot the shit out of you with these little.
No,
that would be right.
And hey,
you ain't right.
And hey, honestly, if it's done right, if the soldiers are out there training the way that they conduct actual operations, 90% of those people are never going to get shot at, because that's just not how it works in war now. But
did you ever see? There was a short film called Bambi versus Godzilla. Did you ever see that one?
You'd be amazed.
Ogre's coming to town with his buddies. All right then.
But no, in that setting,
they're just bringing their paintbrush.
Train, you would identify, 10 or 20, maybe 30 of your residents, and they would be the active terrorist cell, and your soldiers would conduct the operation of hunting them down, trying to figure out who they were, asking the other people if they knew anything, and conducting the whole spectrum of operation. You can even buy sniffer kits for the dog that make things smell like bombs or drugs, so you can do the whole training package.
Women to put in the cabins.
Say again?
Unless you put pretty women in the cabins, it'd be worth looking at. Now,
nothing wrong with pretty lady.
There ain't nothing wrong with pretty lady at all. I don't mean it in a immoral or immodest way.
No, certainly.
But instead of building cabins for like that, I mean, you can do that with little tents. If you're gonna like build something, the most reprehensible thing in the United States of America is called a nursing home, right? And I don't know if you've ever poked your nose into one of the places yet or not, because you're probably too young to. Well, golly gee, boss, buggy whips and reinventing the wheel and all this kind of stuff. There's got to be an easier way on families than to put their people. And then, I'm 53 years old. Let's say I didn't have any money, and I'm gonna get into retirement. And I don't have a house. Well, Social Security check is gonna be kind of small, and you have to pay rent and all this kind of stuff out of it. You're not gonna live very good. If we could build people a cabin to live in, out on an acre, if you take care of just the rent portion of the thing, you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
If you wanted to just rescue some people from bad decisions they made, but it's not necessarily bad decisions that they made. There's several different kinds of bankruptcy. There's people that got sick, right? Not their fault, right? There's people that went, spent the money on drugs and stuff like that. That is their fault. Yeah. Somebody lost everything to Lehman. They had all their money in Lehman Brothers. Yeah, that's probably their fault, but it's not. They weren't actively going around messing up. Now, of the pool of the folks in the United States that are going to hit age 65, retirement age, that don't have what it's going to take for them to make it for those remaining 20 years, how many of them are actually sorry?
I don't know. Um,
Well, I'm gonna say it's not that many, because people kind of quit being sorry by the time they get 40.
one would think, but there are so many people on the dole.
Well, all these little girls down here in South Georgia, they go get them a baby, and then the baby daddy doesn't move in, they get a government check. I mean, that's part of their calculations. I mean,
yeah.
folks are calculating what it takes to get a government check. And
here's what happens is Daddy does move in. Daddy does live there, but he never puts a little ring on that finger. And whenever he fills out paperwork of any kind, he puts his mama's address on it.
Okay, but I mean, they're getting they got these cards that they go to the grocery store and swat. You know?
Yep.
I mean that's cool. Or some of them have these little checks, and it takes forever for them to check out the register. And if I'm behind one of those, I usually just change lines. But why are we paying full price for that food? I mean, if you wanted to be an efficiency freak, you know, the wholesale price of a gallon of milk would be a much better price for the state of Georgia to be paying on behalf of these people that have children on the behalf of the state. You see what I'm saying? I'd rather see an EBT store, separate place, or price controls requiring Walmart to sell the gallon of milk for $1.50 to the EBT people. And what do you get it for? Well, we'll give you 10% over what you get it for. Just a handling charge. Well, Walmart wouldn't want to do it. Walmart wants you to pay $2.75 for the gallon of milk, full price, for everybody that walks into the place. Everybody got to pay the same price. Well, no, I'll set up a different store and save the money. Right?
Well, and I like the idea of I don't like the idea of the welfare system in general.
Yeah. So watch this. Let's say somebody.
But with a separate store, you set up a separate store, and that's the only place you can use that EBT card. For one, the EBT card. Are you kidding me? That replaced food stamps under the auspices of let's give them some dignity because people are embarrassed to use food stamps. Okay, really? So we're going to go ahead and institute another bureaucratic system where we have to pay for the administration of a credit card processing company? That's brilliant. But you send them to the EBT store, what they can get is hot dogs, ramen noodles, you know, those kind of things, and fresh vegetables, fresh fruit.
Right.
Staples.
Well, it's usually pretty. Well, and steaks and crab legs. It's usually pretty obvious when somebody's going in there when they've gotten some dope for their EBT card money and they're just buying up a cart full of groceries to carry to the dope man. You can see when it's happening. I mean, but I'd say just have a different store. I'm not worried about whether or not what they feel like. Here's some gum and cheese. It's pretty good stuff. I don't think we should pay full price. I don't think I should be paying $2.75 for a gallon of milk. You know, for that matter. It's just too much for that product.
It is. That's why I shop at Aldi.
Well, Aldi's is so much cheaper. It's like $1 cheaper. You can get a pineapple there for $1 instead of $3.
Yep.
And I shop at. I don't have an Aldi down here, but I'm going to write them a nice letter and ask them to set up a distribution center down here so that they can saturate South Georgia. You like the way I think. Come on, admit it.
Hey, I'm good.
Go ahead and get Aldi to set up a chicken processing plant down here. You know, come on.
I built a couple of Aldis, and I shop at Aldi's a lot. I love Aldi.
Yeah, they're pretty good. It's a great model. We could build our own model. We could build our own Aldis. All we have to do is have a cannery and a processing plant. All we got to do is convince some local government to use government bonds to build the thing. You know, because we're talking about $100 million worth of, or $50 million anyway, to build some appropriate sized stuff. Valdosta High School does have a cannery, and it's outdated. And they've got some sort of little cannery, and I don't know what it would cost to have one of those. I've got a buddy in Mensa who, he's a chicken guy. And he actually got voted to be the LoCSEC for a term or two. But this guy won't talk about nothing but chickens. He designs chicken processing plants. That's what he does. He things that shred chickens into little pieces a certain way in useful ways. But what would stop us from buying a chicken processing plant made by the Germans, ready to go, bringing it to South Georgia, hooking it up, and just going for it. Here's your 10-pound bag. And then have little guys that go to the grocery stores and say, well, you can buy it from those folks over there. You can buy it from us. Right? Because when they closed down the chicken processing plant down here, they didn't just close down the chicken processing plant. They closed down the hatchery, too.
Right.
And the year before they did that, they had made all of the little people that had chicken houses update all of them to the tune of $80,000 a house. And the bank was on the hook for those notes. The local bank thought that, hey, this is a sure thing. The chicken houses are going to be here forever. Right? They didn't anticipate that Bush and Clinton and them were going to use some sort of trade deal to figure out some way to take chicken here, kill it, freeze it, send it to China, have them process it, freeze it, send it back, and sell it. Now, if you've ever read the actual Adam Smith book, back in book 3 of the thing, way back in there, it starts talking about things that are efficient and things that are not efficient. You should have your operations as close to your country as you can have them, because you can't control. If the indicator light that we're going to be so vulnerable that Wall Street could just flick a button and collapse us and we wouldn't have any food will be when they export all these processing plants over to China. And they'll close them all up one day and say, we're doing it in China now. And at that point, we will not be in anything except a vulnerable, compromised position. There's a tactical. If your food supply is controlled by China, that's not very good.
Nope.
And this is all very public, and they're doing it all very openly, and there's no secrets here. They're doing it, and China's over there building processing plants as we speak. And a few months ago, the FDA said, "Yeah, y'all can do that."
Yep.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's just like, I'm sorry I don't have a picture because my smiling, shiny face is beaming right now.
That's what I was about to say. Is that's not something that might happen in the future, or that it's not even something that's inevitable and is going to happen in the future. It's something that is currently in progress.
Yeah. Well, but everything they did was modeled. And so 5 years ago, they experimented with closing the chicken plant down, right? But they planned it a year ahead of that because they had everybody update all their chicken plants to the tune of $80,000, right? Then they come a little further. They weren't just experimenting with collapsing a facet of the local economy. They were talking about taking the local banking out too.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And hopefully the bank learned, and they've divested themselves of such notes. But that may have been the purpose of the exercise as well, for someone else to be holding the notes on those chicken houses so that they can be gobbled up. What was the purpose of the Great Depression? What happened? One major thing that happened in the Great Depression is land down here in South Georgia went from 50 an acre down to 10. One major component of what happened in the crash of 2008 was that our property value in the black section of town where we live descended from $186,000 down to $40,000. We built that house in 1968 for $38,000. $2,000 more will get you all the way up to 2008. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay. And now, after all these years of Obama being in there and the monetary whatever going on, the price of the house has risen all the way back up to $78,000. You see the math there? We're still more than $100,000 below where we were. That did not occur in that same way to that extent to folks that had lived in the exact same house in Dunwoody, right? It's just a pity to be black and have a lot of black neighbors to get foreclosed because you think we did something wrong? We paid our note, buddy, and we're still paying it, right? But yet our equity was completely excoriated. It vanished into thin air, right? So what do I see happening? We've bailed the banks out. Okay, that's not exactly what's happened. We've given the banks a ton of money right? And they didn't lend it out, and we're still giving them a ton of money, are we not?
Yeah,
70 billion or something?
funny thing about organizations, people like to say, well, corporations aren't people. Corporations aren't people. That may or may not be true. But what is true is that they are exactly like people.
Yeah.
And one thing that is true of people that is also true of corporations is you cannot make them wealthy by giving them money.
That's not what the purpose of that money is. The purpose of us giving, the purpose of the politicians, the Federal Reserve people, et cetera, the Treasury people, giving these too big to fail bankers all this money, is they are planning yet another tragic collapse. But this time, they're going to have enough money to be sitting on the sideline and buy up all these stocks when nobody wants to hold them. It's like, Hunt for Red October. What on earth will we do to make all these people want to get off of a nuclear submarine? What on earth can we do to make all these American people want to sell all their stocks? Well, it was like 7 good years, 7 bad years. Here was everybody's read in Exodus or whatever it is, Genesis, and here's the plan. And the plan is socialism, and we're going to take care of everybody, and we're going to get through this agricultural catastrophe, right? But then the plan got changed right in the middle of it, right? When it came time for bailing folks out. Well, I see you got a horse over there. We'll give you some food if you give us the horse, right? And they end up selling themselves into slavery just so they could feed themselves. That's not what the plan was. So we got this bailout plan that come in, and it was supposed to, for the purpose of. But what they're going to do is they're going to buy up a critical mass of the companies in the United States when that collapses yet again, right? And then they're going to take those companies private, and you'll never be able to buy them anymore. And everything else will be made to go bankrupt by artificial means, right? So a third of the companies that exist right now are going to exist, but they're going to be taken private in the collapse. It'll happen so fast it'll make your head swim. Like high frequency trading. Heard of that? Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, day trading.
No, high frequency trading. That. And they've got strange. Just look that one up sometime. And it's going to nuke us, and it'll be neo-feudalism. It's just knocking at the door. It's just right there waiting on us. All we got to do is pull the trigger. Once they get our food supply, that's when they'll do it. Now you're tactful.
All right, Rod, I'm going to give you some homework.
I thought that was going to happen.
There's a book.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Snow Crash. I cannot remember the author's name.
That's fine.
I think it's Neil Stevenson. It's science fiction. But it's science fiction in the same way that Atlas Shrugged was a mystery novel. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it tells a fantastic science fiction story that takes place in a distant future of total laissez-faire capitalist anarchy.
Anarchy.
There is no it speaks of a dystopian future in which there is no government. There are only individual corporations. One of those corporations happens to be the mafia, but and the mafia is in the business of pizza delivery in a very, very funny way. But that's it's a good one. Yeah, Neil Stevenson.
I just remember when good old Lennon and them were always talking. They had theories about the construction of revolutionary conditions, and he was wrong about that stuff. He was pretty good with his dialectic moves to capture everybody's mind and enthrall them with. He was good at getting everyone else to be a good communist. Yeah, Stalin was very good at getting everyone else to be a good communist. He wasn't himself. Mao had the same kind of thing going on. These people took over Russia and China with lies and telling people stuff, right? We spoke at length about getting 100 families here and 100 families there to cooperate to save each other's butts. And it's very, even in the midst of the kind of stuff where the collusional collapse, yet another collusional collapse, leading to the banks taking that money that we gave them to use to buy up all the stocks and then purposefully bankrupting everything else. Well, it was the 13th Amendment, wasn't it, that talked about slavery? The 13th, 14th Amendment. You look, there's one of them, the government has the right to punish you using slavery. The other one had a clause in it that said something about any debts that arose against the government in the course of incursion, insurrection, or rebellion would be void. Right? I mean, we're talking about voidable activities here, but we don't have a Supreme Court that would vote that way, do we? I mean, our Supreme Court that we have will let people burn the flag and say that's free speech, even though it doesn't involve the vocal cords or the pen in the hand. You understand what I'm saying? I think it's the 14th Amendment that talks about voiding debts that are incurred in the name of the government on behalf of the
14th Amendment abolishes chattel slavery, establishes the definition of a citizen. It voids the idea of birthright citizenship with the clause and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and establishes the equal protection under the law clause, which is the goofy excuse by which the Supreme Court decided to do the gay rights, the gay marriage thing. So that's the 14th Amendment.
I'm talking about Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. I'll read it to you real quick. The validity of public debt of the United States, authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned, but neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave. All such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Okay, yes. So if that's what we have to hang our hat on to stop the sort of thing that's occurring in Wall Street. Someone's going to have to find that they are in fact running a rebellion and insurrection, and then we can use the 14th Amendment against them and their Federal Reserve Bank. And then how much of the $18 trillion debt goes away? All of it that was used for purposes of rebellion and insurrection. Trump's not talking about that now, is he?
Not yet. Give me a couple of weeks.
I'm sorry. Does that sound like bald-headed guy? Did I get bald-headed guy enough that time?
Okay, so now we need to find somebody who's a little too cocky and has a little more money than he knows what to do with and make a bet. Hey, I bet you I could get Trump to run the rest of his general election campaign on the issue of abolishing, not paying, but abolishing the national debt.
Yeah, don't you think some folks would think he was a bigot then?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'm going to have to call it a night. I'm wiped out. It's been a long day. And it's time to go lay my head down on the pillow. So, it has been wonderful. Rod, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We've had a great conversation.
Yeah, hang around for a second for the after party once you click off.
Absolutely. But it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Cave, thanks for dropping in. I've got
sorry I didn't add much, and I will not be staying on afterwards. But.
Okay. Well,
have a good night, guys.
Good night, brother. So, for my one viewer that's watching right now, and for everybody, for the other 50 to 100 viewers that are going to see me before 0700 tomorrow mañana, please subscribe to the channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check out our Patreon account, and keep an eye out for the upcoming Pinterest where I'll be sharing some original Brushfire Mind themed memes. And until next time, remember, If you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. If you set a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life. Good night.